This conversation with Abby Kneipp is in many ways about what happens when life strips everything back. Over the last few years, Abby moved through what many would call a dark night of the soul, a period of deep physical pain, heartbreak, isolation, and the unraveling of almost every part of her life. She found herself questioning not just where she belonged, but how to even exist in her own body. In this episode, we explore what it actually means to live from the soul, learning to listen to that quieter voice beneath the noise of fear, conditioning, and survival, and choosing to trust it even when it leads you into the unknown. Hey everyone, I'm Yamuna. Welcome to the first season of The Long Road Home, a podcast where travelers, storytellers, and culture makers I've met along my global journeys share the stories behind their paths, their roots, the roads they've traveled, and how those journeys have helped them find their way home in the world and within themselves. I'm so glad to have you here with me. Let's go. Hey everyone, welcome back to The Long Road Home. I am really excited about today's interview with Abby Kneipp. She is a mystic, a wild woman, and a healer. She spent the last 13 years working with many indigenous tribes around the world and sitting in plant medicine ceremonies. She supports women in healing their wombs, awakening their pleasure, and reclaiming their power. She's also the author of 3 multi-authored books. She supports entrepreneurs with big visions and helps people recover from PTSD and complex trauma. And she's an absolutely fierce advocate for children and indigenous rights. And she is joining us from Peru, the Peruvian mountains, in fact. So I'm so excited to have you here, Abby.
Oh, hey, beautiful sister. So happy to be here with you.
We met, actually, for the listeners here, we met in an uni ceremony, which is an ayahuasca ceremony with the Yawanawa from Brazil, 5 years ago in Tulum, Mexico, on like a week-long retreat that we were both a part of. And one of my favorite memories of you from that time is, I think it was the closing sort of ceremony, if you will, the closing breakfast, and we were just dancing like mad in the kitchen. And I remember we had these massive cheese grins and the music was incredible. The drums were pumping and we were just like shaking our hips as we do. And it was, I just love that memory of you.
Oh, I love that memory so much as well. And oh my gosh, just like the celebration at the end of a week like that. Hey, it's just, I love that memory so much.
It's incredible. And you've done a
Wow.
lot of work with indigenous people and sat in a lot of ceremony. And I'm curious, what really propelled you to that path? And, what are some of the biggest takeaways you've had from walking the medicine road?
Well, I'm turning 36 this year, and I remember finding an article when I was 20 about ayahuasca on my first ever laptop I had in my little caravan on my parents' property. And no one I knew had ever done it. I didn't speak to anyone about it. There wasn't much information about it. I didn't know anyone in the medicine realm, but I just came across this article. I've always been someone that's been very open-minded, and I was fascinated. Like, I've never been fascinated by anything in my life. Like, something just took over, and I did so much research on it. And interestingly enough, a few months later, my brother asked, "Hey, do you want to go to South America?" I said, "Yes."
Wow.
Like,
Cool
when are
brother.
we yeah, and I said, "When are we leaving?" Like, I didn't ask any other detailed questions. "When are we going?" And he said, "Let's give it a year. Let's save up money. Let's get a one-way ticket." And so we did. We went for a whole year together, 2013, and I kept it pretty close to my heart, like, I've got to sit with ayahuasca. I didn't talk about it with anyone. It wasn't this, big thing, but it was like, I've got to do that. And I did it in Bolivia, in the Amazon, and then in the mountains. And there was this feeling of like, I've done this before, and not in that fluffy, shallow way of like, okay, I'm now Cleopatra from Egypt. Like, actually, like, this feels familiar. And I had no idea that it was going to be a massive part of my life. But I remember feeling this feeling of peace afterwards, like, oh, wow, I wonder if this is what peace feels like. I was 22. And then it just kept calling me, but I always took breaks in between. I'm not someone that's done a crazy amount of ceremonies. In 13
Mm,
years, I've done 15, which to me is a lot because I go really deeply, but I've never been someone that feels like I have to do it all the time. I mean, it's been three
mhm.
and a half years since I have done Aya, and I kept meeting medicine people. And then I started on the journey with peyote, with chuma, bufo, cambo. Um, and it just opened me to new realms of possibilities. It helped me heal trauma that I was really struggling to heal with people. And it helped me to really see the ways in which I was living in illusion. And then sitting with all these different tribes was something that I dreamt of since I was a little girl. Like when I would sit in a circle, whether it was medicine or not, I just felt like I was home. Like my soul felt like it was home.
I
And
get that. Absolutely.
yeah. And I know so many people can relate to that, no matter which country we were born into in this lifetime, that a lot of us are indigenous to somewhere. And I feel like it helps us bring us home. And that's really what it did for me. I just wanted to come home inside myself. Yeah. Oh, and I'd say the biggest takeaway would have to be always, always listen to the soul. Like, always listen to the soul because it is just always trying to lead us to our deepest joy, peace, freedom, and home inside ourselves. And yeah, I'd say the soul knows the way, and we just got to get out of our head and listen. And it's an ongoing journey, right? There'll be a new challenge and a
Absolutely.
new obstacle, but deeper down within us, it knows how to move through it. And I'd have to say that Indigenous people in the medicine has probably shown me that the most, that no matter what anyone else says, our soul knows.
That's beautiful. And I totally agree
Mm,
with you. And I'm just curious for listeners who, might not really have an idea of how to really listen to their soul or to
mhm.
differentiate between the voices of the head and the voice of the soul. Do you have practices or have you, developed a system for yourself or a way of really navigating all of those different voices and understanding which one is really coming from the truest, deepest part of yourself?
So for me, the soul usually is more quiet, where the mind is usually more loud.
Mm,
And but it doesn't mean that the soul isn't persistent. Sometimes when it wants us to know something, it can be quite persistent, but usually the voice is more quiet, and it's just kind of like this inner knowing. And I realize the more that I act on that inner knowing and the more that I trust that, the more it becomes a natural way of being. So for anyone that wants to live more from soul, intuition, it really does come down to continuing to trust your instincts and going, you know what, I'm going to do that. And it's like working your muscles. The more that you do it, the more that it's just going to work for you, and it becomes a natural way of being. But in regards to all the different parts of us, and some people are new to this, that's deep in my trauma work. And when I had a near death experience and wasn't getting the help I needed at one point in my life and had extreme PTSD, I just diagnosed myself, and I just sat with like all the different parts of me, and I started to study them and listen to them. And what I've realized is the more sensitive you are, from working with many people with trauma and myself, and the more trauma you've gone through, generally speaking, we will kind of have many different parts of us. And so it can be like the rebel, the outcast, the elder, the grandmother, the wild woman, and we generally all have archetypes within us. But then because of trauma, we will have different parts. You know, the teenager that just doesn't care about anything, the inner child. And so when I learned to sit with all those parts, like for example, if I was about to do something that was really scary, it was a new thing, and my mind and those parts were freaking out, but I knew it was the right thing to do. Just take a moment and listen to what they had to say. And one of them may be like, oh, it's not going to work out. And another part may be like, this is scary. Why are we doing this? Like, we don't need to do this. And just listening to them without judgment and going, I hear you. And everything you have to say is valid, but I'm going to do this anyway. And it's going to be good for all of us. So that's also another way to work with parts of ourselves, and something that I do. And it helps me to feel more together, if that makes sense. Like I'm not leaving any part of me behind. And it's not always perfect. Don't always, not always able to do it in a particular moment, but knowing that we can speak to different parts of ourselves, I feel helps us live less from the mind and more from a deeper place.
Thank you for explaining that. That is wonderful.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to something you said because you said near death experience. That sounds
Yeah.
like a really pivotal and transformative moment in your life. And would you be willing to tell us a little bit more about that?
Um, Yeah, it was about, I think, 2 years after my dad died, and I just hit like a pretty low point in my life, broke up with the person I thought was going to be my soulmate. And I was just like, okay, what am I doing with my life? And just feeling like really lost. And I think this was back in 2017, and there was three things that happened actually. There was a gas tank that the whole hose leading up to the gas cylinder was on fire. Um, I have no idea how it happened. I lit everything correctly. And I remember standing there going, oh my God, like this could blow up, and that's it. And I was throwing like cups of water at it. It's like those 20 seconds felt like eternity, and it somehow just went out. so, so I was like, okay, obviously isn't my time to go. And then a semi-trailer truck almost completely wiped me out off the road. And then the big one happened. So it was like three in a row, which was kind
In
of
succession.
crazy. Yeah. And it was actually in a medicine ceremony. It was the first time I ever did ayahuasca in Australia, and the last time I would ever do it. I just
Hmm.
believe with some medicines, it's important to do it where it comes from. And there was a lot of red flags, but because I was in such a state of trauma, it's like it's easy to override them when it's like, oh, maybe that's just my own fear. And the guy was a herbalist. He wasn't a medicine person. He was Australian. But the dangerous thing was he was mixing ayahuasca with acacia. Now, acacia is an Australian native bush flower, and it's like our version of ayahuasca, that the Aboriginals would sit with and dream up, incredible visions. But I didn't know much about it. And going in, it was a really naive thing to do. It was the only time I felt like I was out of integrity with the medicine, and oh my gosh, apologized to the medicine and did all sorts of things to repair my connection to the medicine. But I think combining those two medicines is highly dangerous and do not recommend to anyone listening. And yeah, it was the second night, actually. It was two ceremonies. I just went completely out of my body. Like I was floating above my body, and I couldn't feel my body at all. So I was like
Wow.
observing myself. And then I went so deep into the cosmos that I thought I had died, and I could have um completely for a few moments, because it was just blackness, just black, but like there was no thought. So like I don't even remember how long that lasted for, but there was no thought of like, oh, where am I? Or it was just black and I just ceased to exist. And then a thought came online and it felt like eternity later. Oh, am I consciousness observing itself? Like, where am I? Like, what? And I realized, oh my God, like I'm not in my body. Where am I? And then it's not like I had this huge epiphany or saw God or anything, but I did hear a voice say, you have a choice if you want to cross over or you want to come back to earth. Like it's your sovereign choice. It always is. And I remember feeling this overwhelming bliss and love, like, oh wow, it would be beautiful to go home. I'm suffering so much on earth. Why would I want to go back? And then I saw all these children's faces. And one of my biggest mission is help as many children as possible that are suffering. And they said, you made us a promise. And that was the only thing that brought me back. And, but then I was stuck with, how do I get back into my body? Like, how? And it felt like hours of me trying to get back in my body. Like every prayer, I called in every ancestor, and it was the hardest thing of my life. I had like a selenite crystal and I was holding it so tightly that I was just sweating. And I still have that selenite crystal to this day. And I'm so attached to it because I feel like it was the only thing that was kind of like anchoring me. And I kind of came back into my body, but it took 7 months and it took a powerful Māori woman from New Zealand who then became my mentor for 2 years to actually bring me back in my body. And after that, like, I wish I took a before and after photo because I look completely different. And she's like, oh, finally, you're here.
My gosh.
um, yeah, so I was in deep trauma for those 7 months after those ceremonies and PTSD. And that's when I diagnosed myself and sat with all the different parts that I shared before. But I feel like it was a powerful initiation for me to realize just how dangerous some people are.
Incredible story.
Pretty wild, hey?
Wow. It is so wild. And, it really sounds to me like, yeah, like your soul split off in some way, or you had
Mm-hmm.
some kind of a rupture. And it sounds like a lot of your work has been about coming back home to yourself in your body.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what this is all about, these conversations that I'm having. So one of the things that really caught my attention and was sort of the motivation for reaching out to you to have this conversation was you put out a couple of videos on Facebook that came across my feed just last week, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
they were very vulnerable and very real. And you were sharing about the last 3 years of your life.
Yeah.
And I noticed that you had sort of disappeared because you were very out and outspoken and online quite a bit at one point. And I know you'd been in a relationship and there was a lot of fierce advocacy for Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
And then I noticed that there was a retreat from sort of the world in some sense. And
Yeah.
as the women that we are, I can understand that, sometimes we got to take care of business at home. We got to do things that don't need to be performed online. But when you came back and you posted those videos, they were really touching. And you shared a little bit
Mm-hmm.
about what has been happening for you and this sort of dark night of the soul, for lack of a better term, that you had
Mm-hmm.
been going through in the last few years. And I'm just wondering if you could share a little bit about what these last 3 years have been like for you with your return to Australia from, I believe you were in Peru a few years ago, right? And then you went back to Australia, and then you lived this experience of being over there for the last few years, which has now brought you back to Peru. So it sounds like something
Yeah.
has come full circle for you. But what was really going on in those years that you were away that initiated the video that you put out to us in the world?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. I think this is the first time I'm actually speaking about this with someone, so it feels really good. And I know that whenever we share a vulnerable story, it helps others know that they're not alone too in their experience. And yeah, so the last time I was here in Peru was the end of 2022, and I got the message I needed to go home. I mean, I needed to anyway because I hadn't thought about setting up a visa, but I got this message like my mum needs help. And I was right. And I just finished medicine, and I felt the healthiest, clearest, vibrant like I'd ever felt in my life. Like everything was aligning in my life. It's like it was like, oh, all this personal development and all the money I've spent on healing is finally paying off. Every area of my life is going amazing. Well, then
Yeah.
life just is so humbling. And then I got home and I was fine the first 3 weeks, still felt so amazing. And then I started getting joint pain, sharp pains in my head, night terrors, fevers, nausea, indigestion, like the most intense symptoms I've ever felt in my life. And then I realized my mum's not well. So that was the correct message I got. My mum's not well. Like, what's going on with her? And then I saw this massive, and I respect everyone's beliefs, but this is definitely my experience. And I saw a massive 5G tower, like not too far from her house. And I went, okay, I knew these 5G towers were bad. I know they're pure radiation and they're pumping out weird frequencies. Um, I warned people about them, but I'm going to do deeper research. And every symptom I had and my mum had was symptoms of that. And there's studies being done. I've spoken to scientists and professionals in the EMF field that there's a percentage, about
Uh-huh.
7% of the world, that are highly sensitive to EMFs. And it makes sense that the ones of us that are like highly sensitive, witchy women, of course we're going to be sensitive to frequencies. It's like I'm sensitive to the mountains of Peru. This is a beautiful frequency. Like it doesn't take long for me to feel the power of this land. But if I'm put in an environment where there's all these bioweapons, because that's what they're called, then that is going to absolutely impact me.
I have heard a lot of stories about these types of things over the years. Probably the first time that I really started to take it seriously and do like a deep dive in research was around COVID times. And I used to work at the supermarket in the city that I was born in Canada. And I just got chatting to a lot of people, and it was like a health food supermarket. And so there were a lot of kind of people who were in the alternative side of life and did a lot of research about health and the body. And there were a lot of conversations about 5G and about the installation of towers. And I got into some really, really deep conversations with people who were far, far down that rabbit hole. And it seemed that there was a lot to it that we didn't know, and that there was a lot of truth to it that was yet to be revealed. And I haven't really spoken to anyone who's had an experience so intimate as you with the effects of 5G. And I just know from my own experience of living in the mountains in Mexico. For the first maybe 3 years of living here, we had absolutely no internet and there's no signal to this part of the mountain. And I can feel the difference even just going to town and coming back, or sometimes there's like week-long power cuts here. And it's actually palpable to be in a place where there are no signals. There's no access to information, to news. There's no way of checking your social media. To be in a place where you don't even have that access and you're not in this world of waves really does feel different.
So that was actually the biggest part of the journey. And then um, all my friendships collapsed. Nothing happened. There was just nothing there anymore. And I think because I just lived in Mexico, Peru for 2 years, I'd gone so deep in my healing, completely came back a different person. No friendship survived. And then I got into a relationship, and then that absolutely broke my heart. I moved 20 times to try to get a safe distance away from 5G. I became homeless at one point for 6 months during a housing crisis, lived in a tent with the guy I thought who was my soulmate in Western Australia, and that was crazy. And then I found out about Palestine. And it didn't take me long to see the truth of what was going on. And I can't even explain it. I think it brought up so much of my Irish, actually, what the Irish went through in my lineage. And it just completely dismantled these false identities that I was still living in, like the performing feminine, all these identities where I'm like, wow, yeah, I want them to crumble. Any way that I still saw that I was feeding any sort of hyper individualism, I faced it all. And I got death threats, rape threats, backlash, like exiled from every person that I thought was a friend, clients, communities in Australia, completely exiled when I started speaking about white supremacy. And that was tough. It was like, honestly, it was 3 years of one thing after the next. And I just had to strap in and hang on because it was like, there was like little moments where I could breathe, but it was like every area of my life collapsed. I couldn't put my energy into my business and sustaining myself because I was in so much physical pain. It was, and I spent all my money on healing. And then I found a company, thank God, where their products actually work against EMF protection. The moment that came into my life, boom, I noticed a complete difference. And I went, yep. But it was hard because my mother was the only person I could talk to about it. Everyone thought I was just playing a victim or just making it up in my head. And it was the most isolating thing I've ever been through. I still have trust issues with people. I spent only time with my mum really for the last 2 years and completely isolated myself the rest of the time. I saw how humanity can be so cruel that in the darkest time of my life, hardly anyone reached out and just said, hey, I've got you. Like there was hardly anyone, but everyone seemed to know what was going on in my life. Everyone, the amount of people that watched me suffer for 3 years and did nothing. Oh my God, that is a whole other
Wow.
level of pain. And I'm still moving through that pain. And some days I'm like, I don't even know how to digest that because I'm a highly sensitive soul. And I was like, wow, people turn their back on me because I stood up for people on the other side of the world that are getting blown up.
I think what you're speaking to is, that moment where telling the truth or standing for something actually costs you belonging. It's so painful because we're wired for connection, but there's also something in that, where you're choosing alignment over approval. And that can be incredibly isolating, especially when it comes from people that you thought would stand by you. I know many of us have a different experience of that. Like it could be in our families of origin or in our cultures or in friend circles for not doing things the way other people do. A lot of people on the alternative side of life who see things in different ways have experienced some of that social isolation, but it's so prevalent and it's so much like a part of the human experience. It sounds like one of the biggest part of your experiences of going home was really feeling pushed out in some way or exiled from a community of people that you thought were your people, but then maybe discovered through life and experience that they're not.
I'm a soul that really likes to experience something firsthand. Not only does it make me amazing at helping people with trauma, because I know what it's like to be exiled, accused of things, the villain in people's stories, left behind, excluded. I've felt that my whole life for standing up for things. Um, I want to know what people are going through. And I think my soul continually puts myself in those situations so I know how to best help them. I really feel like my soul's like, let's just go through it and come out on the other side. And then we really know how to help someone. Um, it's the only way I can explain the last 3 years because the only thing that got me through was Peru. Like I did everything you could imagine, like every biohacking thing, every like health protocol. I was doing it. I mean, I was in the sauna 6 times a week for a year straight and doing weights and hit cardio and it didn't seem to shift much. Like I was doing every detox you could imagine. And I just went, Abby, you know what? You're in an environment that is harming you. You're in an environment that is making you sick. And everyone can tell you that you're making it up. But I was in deep pain for 3 years and 3 months, like the most amount of excruciating physical pain. Like I don't even know how I withstood that because I wanted to help my mum get to the other side and help her heal. And then I said, Mum, I can't do this anymore. Like, I literally have to move to Peru in 5 days, completely pain free. I mean, I was having stabbing pains, chest pains, heart
Wow.
palpitations. I couldn't breathe properly, um, sharp pains in my head, all over my body constantly. The moment I got to Peru, 5 days, everything was gone,
That is
all of it.
incredible.
And I knew that was going to happen because I knew I was right. I
Yeah.
knew that my soul knew what was going on. And the moment I got to these mountains away from the 5G, I was like, of course, I knew.
Wow. So, yeah, and then that really speaks to the idea of, I guess, not necessarily the wrong place, because I suppose every place has a lesson and a gift wrapped in the lesson. But it sounds like you really have a sense for where you belong in some ways. I don't know
Hmm.
if it's even specific to a country, but it sounds like you're
Yeah.
being led by your soul and you're listening to yourself. And I mean, I think first of all, it's really commendable because in the world that we live in today and just the way that we're sort of conditioned, it's hard sometimes to really
Mm,
trust in ourselves and trust in our inner wisdom and guidance. There's so many voices,
yep.
telling us so many things. So I think it's amazing that you have such a strong inner compass and that you have the courage to really listen to it and that
Mm,
you made it to the other side and that you're in Peru and like there must be a lot of heartache involved in that, especially because you said your
mm,
mom was, your biggest champion and was by your side for
hmm.
all of it. And, how do you feel being far away now from her?
Yeah. And thank you for sharing that. Yeah. God, every time I think of her, my heart just swells. Like, yeah, like I've never loved someone so much in my life. And just the way we had each other's back because she was in it too. She was in that much pain as well. And just like, I feel like if I didn't have her, I would have gone completely insane because she was the validation of like, I'm not crazy. This is real, right? And she's like, yeah, I'm feeling the exact same symptoms as you. And like, even though it was the most hardest, painful 3 years of my life, I'm glad that my mother didn't have to go through that alone. And saying goodbye to her at the airport was like, oh, it was like so crushing. But we both knew like I had to do this. And the beautiful thing is, I said to her, Mum, like, I'm going to be held by the land. My prayers are going to be even more powerful because we pray for each other all the time. And she said she's been feeling even better, because I'm using the power of this land as I give back to the land and asking for help for my mother. And so I feel like I can be of more service for her now being over here. But she is going to come visit me at the end of the year, and I'm convincing her to stay for a while, and I'll help her to, like, properly heal away from all of that as well. But yeah, I miss her because I realized, wow, there's so many different types of soulmates, and my mother is definitely my biggest soulmate. Um,
I
and I
love
feel
that.
like I know, and I feel like, oh God, like, thank God for her because I haven't got that with anyone else in my blood family, and thank gosh I've got it with her because she's my mother.
Oh, I feel that so hard. That's so beautiful. Um,
Yeah.
in Peru, I mean, paint us a picture of where you are right now.
Oh my gosh. So as I'm sitting here chatting to you, beautiful sister, I'm looking out to one of my windows. Well, actually, every window I look out of, it's just an almost 360 view of these mountains here. And they are just so powerful but gentle. And when I first learned about them, it was, I think, 2018, first time I'd done Wichuma. I'm sitting with the Quechua people, last descendants of the Incas, and they said, like, anyone can have a relationship with these mountains. You just speak to them, you give thanks to them, and you ask for help. Any problem can be resolved. And honestly, every time I feel fear or anxiety, I just go to the mountains. I just speak to them and boom, it's just gone. It's unlike anything I've ever experienced. And they're just sitting there so majestic and so humble, yet so powerful. And oh my God, like the view is just, I can't even believe this is real. And that was the visualization I had for years. It was like the only thing that would get me through this dark night of the soul was I'm going to have a house in Peru in the mountains. And not everyone gets this view. And I feel like it was the universe going, here, my child, come rest. Like, come rest with the mountains. Let them take it from your body, you know?
Yeah, you made it. You made it, girl. You
Yeah,
made it to the other
like,
side. Here you go.
yes. Seriously.
So, from sitting where you are now, looking out at this beautiful view, and you look back at these last 3 years, and I guess a lot of the roads that you've walked to get here, do you see the sense in it? Is the wisdom the reason? Do you feel that there's the gift? Like, you've come to the gift part of all this undergoing that you've been in?
I'm not yet fully at the gift part just because it was such a long time, like 3 years and 3 months. I'm pretty amazed at like how I am after all of that. I don't even know how I've kept my heart open, but my nervous system, it's going to take a little bit more time for my nervous system to feel safe again. So there's a bit more work to do to be done, but it happens a lot swifter here for me in Peru. Um, but what I do know for sure is that it's just going to make me an even better healer, teacher, guide. That I'm able to help people go to an even deeper level of healing in a world full of many charlatans and
Indeed.
people who force people to heal when they're not ready and don't understand what it means to be a trauma-informed leader. It's just another initiation into understanding trauma. And I think the gift is just being a more compassionate human being, equally as fierce. I'm equally as fierce, but yeah, just a human being that has so much empathy for someone suffering. Like, I can really go there with someone. This next evolution of my work is going to be just 10 times deeper than what it was. And that is really exciting.
I'm excited to see that too, because I know you're already a powerhouse. So where is it going to go from here? And like
Yeah.
on that point, actually, one of the things that I guess I feel you're very synonymous with is, womb work, feminine empowerment. I know when I met you, that was a really big thing in your world was
Mm.
healing wombs and a lot of reclamation of pleasure. And for me, as my memory of you, that's how I see you, as this woman who is really in touch with her sexuality and sensuality and was very open and vulnerable in those ways that, again, I feel a lot of society is conditioned sort of away from being in touch with those things. Is that still a large part of your life now?
Yeah, for sure. I love that you brought that up. It definitely is. And I kind of just like over the last few years kind of like turned that more inward, then showed it kind of outwardly. And then going celibate, which I'm so grateful for, being celibate and single for almost 2 years now. It's really helped me to shift the way that I guess I express my sexual energy, but definitely the pleasure will always be a big part of my work with women because not only helps us to heal our bodies, but it also helps us to release, gosh, the centuries of shame that's been put on us for feeling good in our bodies. And it's less and less about, you know, a man and orgasming and And that's amazing. But it's more about us reclaiming ourselves without needing that to come from a man or external society. So, yeah, that's definitely still a big part of my work. Absolutely.
And do you feel that there's some connection with the womb and the feeling of home and belonging and connecting with our womb centers as women?
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely. And I love that you use the word belonging because I would have to say, out of all the medicine ceremonies I've done and wild experiences I've had, it's actually my womb that has made me feel the most at home in myself as a woman. Because when I'm disconnected from her, I feel disconnected from everything. And it's a huge journey to go on as a woman, right? You're a mama and God, that journey in itself. And you look out into the world and there's still such a massive lack of reverence for woman, for mother, for womb. Yet I'd have to say if there was one thing I could only speak about for the rest of my life, it would be the womb. I'm just in awe of the womb. It's literally our third brain. And the world tries so hard to take us away from that, but our womb is so wise and intelligent and holy and sacred and so deeply mystical and such a mystery. And oh my gosh, like she really is the creatrix of life, of everything. And I'm starting to believe more and more that God is a woman. I mean, I look at a mother, I look at a pregnant woman, and I just go, it just brings me to my knees. Like, oh my God, look at her. Like I get emotional because she's carrying life. I think I'll always forever be in awe of women, like,
Mm,
right? Like just giving birth and then becoming a mother. It's like you instantly got to become a mum. You're like, wow.
it is wild. And I'm with you on the idea of God being a woman. I feel like a lot of my time spent in India has,
Mm,
I just love the reverence for the mother goddess. And,
yes. Oh,
having photos or even just the idea of the mother goddess, because I think for those of us that,
mm,
come from societies where we've grown up in the patriarchy, which is probably
yep.
most of the world. And, the gods that many people worship are very rooted in the patriarchy as well. It's just so refreshing to have a mother
Yep.
goddess. And I connect with
Absolutely.
that. And I have never heard that the womb is the third brain. So that is a really cool
Yes.
idea.
I know, right?
And it makes sense.
Totally. It absolutely makes sense.
It does.
Absolutely.
Are there like practices that you do or something that you could share with women listening to try to connect with their wombs if they're not familiar with how to connect with their wombs?
Um, First of all, it sounds incredibly simple because it is, but starting off just like lying down on your bed or sitting down and placing your hands over your womb. At first, some women feel numbness, but it's all just about complete acceptance, non-judgment, and just breathing with her, like literally breathing, like pushing your breath into your womb with your hands over her and really loosening, letting the gorgeous belly just be relaxed and loose and full and just breathing into her and just setting the intention, I really want to connect with you. And even if it feels awkward or weird, just time after time after time, it's going to feel more natural. And then there are certain teas that are really good for the womb, like marshmallow root, licorice root, hibiscus, fennel, really amazing for the womb. You can have it anytime, but especially when bleeding. And I would have to say one of the biggest things that transformed my life was I live my life according to my cycle. So, um, when I bleed, the first 3 to 4 days, I try not to hang around anyone and I'm just with my womb. And I love free bleeding on the earth if that's possible. If not, just reusable bamboo or cotton pads. Um, but just like setting yourself up when you bleed, of just having lots of spaciousness completely changed my life. Not needing to answer to anyone. I know that can be tricky if you're a mama. What I want for all mamas is mamas to get that support, obviously when they're finished breastfeeding, for just like even just a little bit of time for themselves when they bleed. Um, but yeah, it's just knowing like, oh yeah, of course I'm different in this phase of my cycle and I'm different in that phase. And really getting to know oneself in each of the phase as much as possible without judgment. I would say that's the biggest game changer for sure. And for any woman that's listening, if you are still on the pill, zero judgment from me, but it's going to be really hard to connect deeply to your womb if you're on the pill or have the IUD. And your symptoms may be rough for a little while when you get off of it, but it will be one of the best things you do for your health, your womb, your body, your bleed, and you'll feel like a new woman eventually. But the pill does, it creates a massive disconnection. That was one of its designs. So getting off of that will be a game changer as well. So that's a good place to start.
And I feel like, without explicitly knowing all of it, interestingly, through, in fact, ayahuasca ceremonies and some of the teachings that I received, I switched from, the Diva cup and tampons and all those things to just bleeding into pads, which is a bit of an
Yes.
adjustment because we
Yeah.
really, most of us just don't want to feel it, right? It's like this,
Uh-huh.
this inconvenience, this annoying thing that we just want to be over and, get
Uh-huh.
back to life. And I really received that wisdom. And
Wow.
so it's been years that I've been doing it, and it really does feel very healthy,
Mhm.
including like taking the IUD out. And yeah, the pill was a long time ago, but a lot of this stuff really actually came up around the time that I met you. So who knows? Maybe the force and power of the work you do influenced me, because I
Oh,
remember in that ceremony in Tulum that I had a massive womb awakening when we were all dancing
wow.
in the circle. And
Oh.
that was the starting point of a number of different things that happened on that trip. And then a couple of years later, I got pregnant for the first time ever.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah, and I know
Oh,
that the womb work and those kinds of things like was something that was a very strong part of you and your sort of signature in the world at the time that I met you. So I'd like to think that you had an
wow.
influence in that.
Oh, that's beautiful, sister. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you for
Oh,
sharing. So one of the other things,
God.
this is a little, we're jumping around here, but there's so much ground to cover with you. And one of the things that I really enjoyed seeing from a distance as well was your trip to Ireland,
Oh,
because I don't know if you'd been before, and you can get into that, but I have Irish background as well, as I know many people do. But I think there's just something so special about getting to travel to a place where we have ancestral ties
mhm.
and, all that that brings up in us around our identity and understanding of who we are and,
Yes.
those imprints from the past and things that have come down our lineage. So can you speak a little bit to your trip to Ireland, what it meant to you and how it shifted your sense of identity and belonging?
Absolutely. Oh, that was one of the best trips of my life. During the dark night of the soul, it was like a year and a half of my Irish ancestors, like nonstop for both my mum and me, because the Irish part of me comes from her side. We were just getting all sorts of messages in really fun and creative ways. And we'd talked about Ireland many times before. She went when she was 19. And the first time she ever felt like, oh, wow, I've been here before. Um, the first time she'd ever felt that in any country. And she was meant to go twice during 2020 and 2022, but then it didn't work out because of all the restrictions with travel. So we were obviously meant to go together. And I said to her, Mum, even though we're going through a lot physically, we've got to do this because there's never a perfect time to go. And we've been getting the call for a while. Let's just do it. Even though our dollar was really bad and it was quite a pricey trip, we were like, let's just do it. And we went. And the moment I landed in Dublin airport, I was like, oh my God. It was this feeling of like, this is home. And you can know that on an intellectual level, but feeling it is something else. And the people we ran into, the stories we heard, the sacred sites we got called to, like the whole trip was completely co-created with our ancestors. It was so magical. And people would look at us and they would know that we were Irish, which just completely blew me away. It was so special. We went to a place called Cove. It's a really popular tourist place where a lot of our Irish ancestors would have had to have left Ireland. And wow, my mother and I just felt so much grief. But it was beautiful. And we did a little offering to help set them free, of any pain. We threw like flowers and crystals into the river, into the ocean. And then mum had a psychic session and the woman saw it. The psychic saw us healing our lineage. And she said our ancestors saw us doing that and they were so grateful. And it was just one magical thing after the next. We just felt like, oh my God, we belong to a group of people. And of course, on the huge level, we all belong to each other. We know that we all belong to each other. But then of course, we have come into these specific bodies with specific lineages. And of course, we're going to feel a sense of home when we're there because our ancestors, which is in our cells, our DNA, were from that land. And walking on that land and being with the people, it was such a homecoming. And we would go to a pub and we would say, because my mum's last name is Kelly, we're the Kellys. And they go, oh, you bloody Kellys are mad, but you're loyal friends and freedom fighters. And I would hear stories about like my ancestors and how they stood up against the British to try to save their people. And it's like, oh, wow, that's like what I do now. And everything just made sense about like who I was at my core and the things that matter most to me. But yeah, my gosh, it was so beautiful. I highly recommend to anyone who has Irish ancestry. They are just the most beautiful, friendly, welcoming people that is so proud of who they are and their culture and so funny and cheeky. And it was just extraordinary. It was so healing. And I'm glad I did that before returning back to Peru. Just definitely created a deeper sense of belonging.
I love that. I had a very similar experience just having gone to Scotland many times as a child because that's where my father was
Wow.
born, and then never really getting to Ireland, which is where my grandfather was. And it really, yeah, it really brought up different parts of myself and understanding, a
Yep.
deeper understanding of myself when you really go to all those roots. It's a wonderful country to visit. It's just gorgeous and it's very mystical and spiritual. And
Yeah,
I
it
really
is.
appreciated that. And I know you spoke to this as well, just the fierce advocacy of the Irish for the Palestinians as well is
Yep.
something so, it makes me proud to have Irish ancestry. So I know you felt the same when you
Aw,
were there.
I love that. That's beautiful.
There's
Yeah.
so much to see in the world. And I think you and I, we have this, this commonality that we've lived in many places and walked many paths. And so now that you're in Peru, what does home mean to you?
Well, of course, first and foremost, home is always, us inside of ourselves, feeling at peace with who we are and how we live our life and knowing who we are. Of course, first and foremost, I feel that in myself. But I also don't deny my human self that there is also places that really do feel like home. And Peru and Ireland are the only places that have felt like home for me. Um, Even though I was born in Australia, I never felt it since I was a child, and that's okay. So for this physical home here in Peru, I feel like I can just fully be myself here. And I feel free and I feel at peace like I've never felt anywhere else besides Ireland. And I feel courageous and like the sky isn't even the limits. And I think that's because of the mountains. But Yeah, I guess the feeling of home is just like feeling safe and settled and like I belong. Like I walk around just really feeling like I belong. And that's how the Peruvian people treat me as well. And they look at me like, yeah, like I'm meant to be here. And this is my fourth time in Peru. And so I'm planning to actually live here and build my life here.
I love that. I really enjoyed my visit in Peru many, many years ago and hope that I will be able to come back and visit you in your magical mountain
Yes,
abode.
with your little one. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. I want to take her all over the world, so that is for
Oh my
sure.
God.
Well, I think that one of the things that I want to close on, because I do feel that you have so much to speak to this, I get a sense from you that home is somehow so connected to the body and being at home in your soul. And I wonder if there's a way that listeners who might feel disconnected from their bodies or their past, their sense of home, like where could they
Mm,
begin on this journey?
So, one of the ways that I connect to my body that's a really beautiful, simple practice that any man or woman can do is just throughout the day checking in on ourselves, especially as things become more and more fast paced with the internet and way of life. The best way to do this is in nature, but even if you're just in your own home, it's just literally placing your hands over your heart. And it's been proven by science that when our own hands like touch our skin, like we've instantly more connected to ourselves up to 40%, which is pretty amazing. And it slows our heart rate down as well. And so literally just breathing with the heart and asking yourself, like, how do I actually feel in this moment without there needing to be stories from the mind, and just feeling what's there without judgment. Like, yeah, I just feel really sad. Okay. You're allowed to feel that way. And it's amazing what happens when we just give ourselves permission to feel as we feel in that moment. And then, and then it will pass when it passes. And, anything from yoga, walking in nature without a phone, different types of bodywork sessions, those things that bring us into our body, that makes us feel more connected to our body. And I'd have to say, I'll finish it off by saying one of the biggest game changers for me and overall feeling more connected to my body was doing nervous system work. That helped me to feel more safe to actually be in my body and more connected to it. And most of the practices are really gentle and simple, which I love as well. But yeah, anyone that's interested, definitely look up nervous system work, or you could find someone to work with. EFT is also a great practice as well. But yeah, gentle practices doesn't always have to be some big, huge thing. Gentle practices over time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. What a absolute wealth of knowledge and information and exceptionally interesting life experience you've had. I have so enjoyed having this deep dive with you.
Oh.
And there's going to be a lot of links in the post, of course. There's going to be places where everybody can find you: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, Substack. Is there anything else that you would like to add to the conversation before we say goodbye?
I guess the last thing I would say to people listening is that to not be afraid to follow your soul and your curiosity. I have this quote, curiosity didn't kill the cat, complacency killed the cat.
I love
um,
that.
yeah, in a world that's trying so hard to squash our creativity and our deep, deep innocence of what it means to be a human, please follow that, because you know, you deserve to live a life that lights you up. And I wish that for every human being. Yeah, I really
Oh,
do.
thank you, my friend. I am taking that to my heart and putting my hand on my heart as we speak. For everyone listening, we have been speaking with Abby Kneipp from her mountain abode in Peru. Thank you so much for being here, and we are so looking forward to seeing what you cook up next. You've been listening to The Long Road Home, a podcast for travelers, storytellers, and culture makers, exploring the roots that shape us and the roads that lead us home. I'm Yamuna. See you on the road.